Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. I'm your host, theFellowKGB. You can follow me on Twitter at theFellowKGB. And we're moving right along here, NFC West. We're looking at the San Francisco 49ers in this video, and we're going to hop right into a screen share here. We're on the fantasyfellowship.com. I'm on the team page of the 49ers. I did mention earlier that I had a projection video where I go through and I enter the projections for the 49ers. These are my preliminary projections, so things may have changed, but go ahead and check that video out. It's right on the main page there. You can find it on the YouTube channel as well. But we're looking at the head coach here. In offensive coordinator, Kyle Shanahan, he does both. He calls the plays. And then defensive coordinator, Robert Saleh, who's probably going to get a head coaching job soon with how he's been doing. So continuity at the top, we love that. And then we'll look at the quarterback room here, Jimmy Garoppolo, Nick Mullins, C.J. Beathard, and Brock Rudder. So it's all about Jimmy Garoppolo. We'll see if he can improve on last year's numbers. Let's just take a look at those real quick. I'll highlight these. He had 3,978 yards, 27 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, only 62 rushing yards, but he did add a touchdown. He threw the ball at 69.12%, only 476 pass attempts, but he was very efficient with those attempts. 8.36 yards per attempt is pretty good. So solid year for Jimmy Garoppolo all around. Let's just take a look and see where he finished among his peers. So 4-point passing touchdowns, -2 interceptions. We see Jimmy Garoppolo here at quarterback 15. I think that's pretty much his ceiling for this year. This team's not going to want to unload him and let him toss the ball, 35, 40 times a game. So he's not really a game manager. He's above that, but they're not going to really just hand him a ton of pass attempts. This is a team that wants to run the ball and play great defense, and then let him kind of hit Kidal and Debo and all those other guys. So Jimmy Garoppolo, if we look quick at his week-to-week, I guess, game log, we see he did average about 15.2 fantasy points per game. And then the game log is kind of hit or miss, 8.4, a 9.4, a 6.0, an 8.0, and a 9. So that's kind of too many. That's already 5 games below double digits. And then if you look at the other games here, one game here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 games. So 11 games over double digits, but most of these games, 11.8, 10.4, 12.6, a 13.0, a 12.1. These are kind of low games. So he doesn't really have a lot of upside. Maybe he's a best ball quarterback because we do see, a couple boom games here over 20 points. He had 1, 2, 3, 4 really nice games with multiple, look at 4 passing touchdowns and a 3 passing touchdowns. So he does have games where he lights it up, but I think to me, I don't even want to trust him in a 2-quarterback league. I guess if you want to wait, he could be your second quarterback, but this is a team that wants to run the ball and they want to play great defense, and they don't really care about scoring a lot of points. They did score a lot of points last year, but a lot of that came on the ground. So I like Jimmy Garoppolo in this offense for real life football, but I don't really know if I trust him for fantasy to be my steady QB2. But when he blows up, he could win you your week. But I think I prefer leaving him to best ball purposes. So I think that's going to really set it up for the rest of the 49ers here. We're going to talk about the running game a little bit more in depth. So they did trade away Matt Breida to the Miami Dolphins on draft day, which leaves Raheem Mostert and Tevin Coleman all at the top of the depth chart. Now let's just take a look at the numbers from last year. So we saw Raheem Mostert really take hold of this backfield down the stretch last year. 772 rushing yards, 8 rushing touchdowns, only 14 receptions, but he did some serious work in the pass catching game on those 14 catches. 180 yards, that's 12.9 yards per catch, and 2 touchdowns. So Raheem Mostert was the boss when he got the ball on a little screen or whatever. He did run the ball at 5.6 yards per clip, 137 rushing attempts. And then we see, last year, these guys really, Breida, Coleman, and Mostert, they were in a timeshare where Breida had 123 carries, Coleman 137, and then Mostert's 137. So they gave the ball almost 400 times to these 3 players. And now you're pulling out a guy like Breida who had 123 attempts, 19 receptions. That's a lot of potential fantasy points being added to Raheem Mostert's and Tevin Coleman's, value. And at the moment right now, I think Mostert's going somewhere in like the 5th round, 4th, 5th, 6th round of drafts. And Coleman's kind of left for dust, towards the 9th round or so. So I mean, you're going to basically divide Breida's numbers and almost divide those right into Mostert's and Coleman's pile. But Mostert does have more upside. He's a much better runner than Tevin Coleman. I know Coleman has, the knack for pass catching, down. But I think Raheem Mostert's going to be getting a good amount of increased work there just because he's so efficient. And he picks up 12.9 yards per catch from last year. And then if we look, I don't know, there's really no one else on this roster at running back that's going to take carries away from Mostert or Coleman. Like I mentioned, we got Jeff Wilson. Maybe Jerick McKinnon is finally ready to go and get some work, so maybe he gets some of that, Tevin or the Matt Breida work. But I have a hard time, trusting him until we see him healthy. And then they do have a running back that they drafted here. They didn't draft him, but they signed him as an undrafted free agent, JaMycal Hasty. If you go ahead and click on his highlight reel, I have that link there. Check him out because he's a guy that I think can make the team. And if they're not liking where McKinnon's at, Hasty could be a guy that sneaks in and starts to get some work too. But I guess let's just take a look at Raheem Mostert's numbers down the stretch. He had the massive game against Green Bay in the NFC Championship game. I think that's what most people are going to remember him about. But down the stretch, this guy was super steady. He basically took over Week 13 and never looked back. Getting multiple double-digit touchdown games the rest of the way. But again, not a lot of work, no more than 2 targets, as he was a starter. So that's a little bit concerning. They were using Coleman and Breida specifically for that role. But the double-digit touches here is super interesting for Raheem Mostert. And if this is a team that wants to play defense and run the ball, he scored a touchdown in basically every game from Week 13 on. I don't know what happened in this divisional game against Minnesota, where he wasn't used much, but double-digit fantasy points and double-digit touchdowns in every single game besides that Minnesota game. But I don't know. Raheem Mostert, he's got the potential to be a steady RB2. I don't think he's got RB1 upside. That would take like a Coleman injury or something like that to happen, or maybe he just gets so much work in the passing game that no one, realizes that it's coming, and he could, set up nicely there. So I love Mostert's my favorite player. Let's just take a look at Tevin Coleman's numbers real quick. I think I like Mostert in a redraft over Tevin Coleman. I think Coleman's more of a best ball running back dart because we see his numbers week to week are very inconsistent. Only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games last year out of 14 were double-digit points, and then the lows were pretty low. So I can't really advise Tevin Coleman being a steady PPR redraft running back. He's probably best as a running back 3. Guy that you mix into your lineup every now and then. But for best ball purposes, he's going to have, 5 to 8 double-digit, fantasy point games. So I like that. But to me, it's all about Raheem Mostert and then mixing Coleman in on passing downs. And then really who gets all of the Matt Breida leftovers? Is it Jerick McKinnon? Is it the rookie JaMycal Hasty? Or does that get, bumped into Mostert's and Coleman's projections? So there's a lot. The running backs, there's a lot to, a lot of points going this way. But it all starts with Raheem Mostert getting Mostert's probably getting over 200 carries this year. So I think he's the guy that has the safest RB2 bet. So I guess we'll just leave it at that. They still got Kyle Juszczyk here holding down the fullback role. But let's look at some of these receivers. They let Emmanuel Sanders go. They didn't re-sign him after they traded for him last year. So we got Deebo Samuel year 2. We'll get to his broken foot in a second. But then they did spend their one of their first-round picks on wide receiver Brandon Ayuk out of Arizona State. And he's a guy that's kind of similar to Deebo Samuel, maybe not as refined as a route runner, but Brandon Ayuk has blazing speed. He had some really good punt return, kick return duties in college, so he's electric. He can make people miss in the open field, and he's got like a Greg Jennings-ness to his receiving game. So I like Deebo. He can get deep. He can do stuff in the middle of the field too. So it's almost like he's almost like a Deebo Samuel, just not as good as a route runner. So we're seeing two really speedy guys that can get open, and they could probably take some carries too behind the backfield. So I like both these guys. Deebo Samuel did break his foot a couple of weeks ago, and he's on track to be ready for week 1. That's something we're just going to have to monitor. Now, this broken foot thing is something that happened to Trent Taylor last year, and Trent Taylor has never recovered. He had like 4 or 5 surgeries to clean up stuff. So this could be something that lingers, but Deebo Samuel seems pretty confident that he's going to be okay and ready to go. So for now, I'm not docking Deebo Samuel, but I do have Deebo Samuel as finishing as a wide receiver 3. Somewhere in the 30 range, I think, is where he's going to be. I wouldn't reach for Deebo because this is not a passing volume team. If you're going to draft any pass catcher off the 49ers, it's George Kittle or bust. And I wouldn't blame you if you want to draft a 49er and Kittle's the only person you want. I'm totally fine with that because this team, it seems like they're going to be kind of hit or miss on most of these players week to week, whereas Kittle is the only guy that I can guarantee is going to have something going on during the game. So I love George Kittle the most. But these receivers, Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, are going to be the main guys at the top. I don't know if Brandon Ayuk's going to be necessarily reliable enough as rookie year for us, but he's a guy that I'm interested in dynasty leagues. And because Deebo Samuel isn't going to be getting work during training camp because of the foot, Ayuk's going to get as many reps with the ones that he can handle. So that could be nice for him. He could get off to a hot start and be one of the better rookie receivers this year out of the gate. So I like that. They do have Jalen Hurd, who is he's like a pseudo running back receiver hybrid that made some plays in the preseason, and he kind of got shelved last year. So he's going to be a guy that I'm watching really closely in training camp because he could be the guy that emerges as the big receiver on the outside, and he gets some carries and stuff like that too. So he's very versatile, and he's going to be a fun player to watch this summer. Kendrick Bourne's the lone veteran of the group. Dante Pettis, we'll see if he can finally get some stuff going positively and in the right direction. Richie James is still there, Trent Taylor, and then we got a bunch of guys trying to make the team. But I do want to call out one receiver here, Jajuan Jennings out of Tennessee. He was an undrafted free agent, and I'm surprised I didn't put he was drafted here in the 7th round, so that's why I didn't put him down here. But super exciting receiver out of Tennessee. He's electric. He's a skinny little guy, but he makes like Martavis Bryant like plays. He's kind of like an alien, super speedy guy. Can go up and make contested catches. He's very electric, and we'll see if he can get on the field right away. So I'm keeping an eye on him. But again, this team, it's not a passing volume team, so I don't really know if you can rely on anyone outside of Deebo Samuel at the receiver position to be consistent. And even then, let's take a look at. Keep in mind, Deebo was a rookie last year, so his numbers look really impressive when you think about that. And we'll see if he can be consistent. But he's also got the foot injury now to derail his success. But he did average 12.6 fantasy points per game, and last year down the stretch. But week 10 is where he really hit his stride against Seattle, and he started seeing more targets on a consistent basis. He only had one really bad game the rest of the way here against Atlanta, but every other game the rest of the season was double digits. So I'm thinking he's the guy that has the best upside outside of Kittle to start every week in our lineups. So go ahead and target him. And I guess, we already kind of been talking about George Kittle, so we might as well just look at the tight ends. But after Kittle, they got Ross Dwelley, Daniel Helm, Charlie Warner, who they drafted here in the 6th round out of Georgia. And then Chase Harrell's going to try to make the team. But it's all about George Kittle. If we look at George Kittle's numbers last year, he had, 85 receptions on 107 targets. That's insanely efficient. That's almost like 80% catch rate. And then 1,053 yards, 5 touchdowns. Look at the year before for George Kittle. He had 88 receptions, 136 targets, 1,377 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So his yards per catch, dropped by 3 yards. He came down in targets, but he managed to stay afloat, pretty much near the same spot for reception totals. But his yards came down kind of a lot, and then he managed to stay at 5 touchdowns. So I'm looking for George Kittle to have one of those seasons where he scores, 8 to 10 touchdowns. I think that could be this year. Now that they got a little bit more offensive firepower at the receiver position to help, distract things. So I think Kittle, outside of Travis Kelce, Kittle's probably my favorite my favorite tight end to grab early. Because it just feels like he's going to have one of those years where he leads the league in touchdowns. And I think those plays are just going to be coming soon. So he's still a young tight end at the position. I think he's only 25, 26 years old. So he's in his breakout, season window. He's never had more than 5 touchdowns in a season. So I'm betting the over this year. He's going to probably be, up to 1,200 yards. And he is the leading receiver on this team. So he's the guy I feel the best about in the 49ers. I'd probably rank them as Kittle and Deebo as guys that you can just leave in your lineup every week. Kittle, the tight end 1, Deebo as a wide receiver 3, flex, and then Raheem Mostert's going to have, RB2 flex value for most of the season, with Coleman kind of popping in and out as best ball. I think formats work best. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the 49ers. I mean, 13-3 last year. This is going to be a really good team defensively. They added Javon Kinlaw here at South Carolina with the 14th overall pick. They grabbed a tackle, a tight end, and a receiver. So they're looking at the offense here. The defense is not the problem. They're just trying to get some more help here for Jimmy G, and we'll see how that goes. I guess offseason additions, they did add Trent Williams. They signed Travis Benjamin. They re-signed some of their guys. Did I put Benjamin on the list here? Yep, I got him here. So it's going to be interesting, man. The 49ers, they got the Seahawks chomping at the bit, which I'll make the video for them next. The Rams are going to be improved, and the Cardinals are going to be improved. So the Niners they're not comfortable at the top. The defense is going to be great, but they're trying to reload that offense and get that. Hopefully that puts them over the hump and helps them get back to the Super Bowl. So I like the Niners. Hopefully you can grab some of the guys that we discussed. And yeah, that's going to do it. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And then if you're listening on any of the podcasting platforms, I highly recommend checking us out on YouTube. Leave a rating, leave a review, whatever your podcast platform allows. And yeah, thank you so much for watching and for your time, for listening. And with this video, I'm going to do, if anyone's watching to the very end, you can leave a comment on the YouTube channel, or I think it'd be best to hit me up on Twitter. You can DM me, but message me on Twitter and let me know you watched to the very end of the San Francisco 49ers video. And I will send you a free link to my 2020 projections template, and you can just mess around and take a look at that. You're not going to be able to edit it, but you'll have access to my projection file and all the good stuff that I have in there. I've been kind of showing it throughout these videos, so that's what it's going to be looking like. And yeah, I just want to share it and get some feedback on it. So let me know, DM me on Twitter. And yeah, thank you so much. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.